Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Profit Minds podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stephen Kirch, creator of the Profit Minds Growth System, a unique blend of profit growth, productivity acceleration, and building robust business process for scale. In every episode, I interview entrepreneurs and small business owners from around the world with a unique story to tell. You can find the show on YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple and Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and more. Well, hi, everyone. Today, my guest is Dave Rosenberg, a former F-14 Naval Flight Officer, the founder of Locked On Leadership, and the architect of the Radical Accountability Leadership Doctrine. Today, we're going to talk about how to build a culture of accountability. Welcome, Dave.
Hey, Steve, good to be here.
So, the way I start every one of these is, tell me your story. How did you get to be, well, I'd love to hear the story of this, the F-14s, but how did you get to be the creator of the Accountability Leadership Doctrine?
Yeah.
That sounds awfully official.
Thank ChatGPT for that, right?
Oh, okay.
No, radical accountability is the name I gave to the process that I developed over 35 years in various leadership roles for getting people to do what they're supposed to do when they're supposed to do it with pride and precision. And that's my definition of radical accountability. And it really came about as to fulfill it, like most things, to fulfill the need, frankly, of me not wanting to be a micromanager, right? How do I get people to step up and do their job? And the history of how I got here is more than the amount of time we have. But in a nutshell, I joined the Navy out of college because I wanted to be an astronaut. And although at the time I wore glasses, I was told, so I didn't think I could fly for the Navy. And more naval aviators turned into astronauts at that time, that was the best pipeline to do it. But a friend of mine, this is before Top Gun, told me about this thing called the Naval Flight Officer. So think Goose in Top Gun. That's what I did.
Okay.
And we don't need to have perfect vision. So I joined the Navy, didn't become an astronaut, still a dream for the record. So if somebody taps me on the shoulder in the middle of this podcast, I'm saying bye and going to Houston, but we're probably safe. And coming out of the Navy, I went into sales, selling telecommunications equipment. And what I discovered rather quickly is that there's a different mindset in the military than in civilian life. And the mindset's all mission oriented, get the job done. When I was flying, if we had a problem flying, and this happened, and the only option was to land on a carrier flight deck because you're hundreds of miles from land, the flight deck had to get cleared for landing because it's not like an airport where stuff happens off the flight line. Stuff's happening on the flight line. They're getting ready for the next mission go. They have to pull all those aircraft out of the way so you can land in an emergency. And the average age of the people working on the flight deck, in my day it was men only, but the people today, is 19 years old. And if they don't do their job right, people die. It's that simple. And I didn't see that in the civilian world. So
usually in the civilian world, it's not a matter of life and death.
Right. It's only a matter of livelihoods, right?
Yes.
And so how do we get people to react as if there's lives on stake when livelihoods are the only thing at stake is the question. And it really comes down to three things that I recognize. One is the documentation and training, right? In the military, we got trained how to do it. I learned how to fold my skivvies and do perfect 4-inch by 4-inch squares, right?
Okay.
They assume nothing, teach you everything. And it sets people up for success if you think about it. And now everything's done in the same way by the same people. And so now you understand how to be successful at your job. And then they inculcate into you this idea that if you don't do your job right, other people are going to suffer. It's this mindset of thinking about others. If you hear stories of people who have been awarded a Medal of Valor, each and every one is the same. If I didn't do the job, somebody was going to die. If I didn't charge that hill, take out that machine gun nest, whatever it might be. In World War II, there's a guy named Vitoli who literally held off German panzer units while the battalion headquarters was being relocated. It's because they needed to get everybody out of there. And he actually had two main gun fired at him and not directly hit his round, but where he was hiding and got blown up, blown away, crawled back to his machine gun and held them off for hours, received a Congressional Medal of Honor. Why do you do that? Because your friends are going to die. So if we can create that, I realize if we create that attitude of how do my actions affect others, people will step up to the plate. And then the last thing, of course, is our leaders in the military, for the most part, not everybody, but most, and they're really good leaders, they walk the talk. They don't ask you to do anything that they don't do themselves or haven't done themselves. And so now you get this three things coming through. And over 30 years in leadership in the private sector, I started developing that. And that became my radical accountability framework. So now I work with business owners who want to um, grow their businesses in such a way that they don't have to do everything and they actually start focusing on the strategic aspects of their business while their team does the day-to-day stuff and executes their visions.
Oh, I love that. So remind me again, the three things, the first one.
Mindset, model, mechanics, in that order,
Okay.
right? And the mindset's a little bit more than thinking about others, but why do you exist as a company? Understanding that, you know, every company exists because they bring value to the world. Most don't realize that. They don't really understand it. Like a plumber, I've worked with plumbers before, for example, small businesses. What's the value that plumbers bring to the world? Any idea?
I don't have to do it myself.
How about civilization wouldn't exist without them?
Yeah.
And I mean that
No,
sincerely.
no, it's yeah, absolutely. If you look back, that used to be that, you go off into the woods, right?
Well, so irrigation, right? We
Yeah,
have to, in order to have a city, we need to grow food near us. We can't pick up 100,000 people in a small city and move it where the food is. We have to have the food for us. We need irrigation and then health, right? And we saw this in the Middle Ages. Without proper sewage, you have disease, you have pestilence, you have all sorts of nasty things happen.
that's right. Yep. And yeah, so running water inside, obviously a luxury, but having the water available, that you don't have to necessarily go to the well. You have a limited amount of water that's available.
Right. The
Um,
more water you have, the more sanitation you have, the bigger your city. That's why we
yeah,
can have cities of millions and millions of people today, where, in Rome, which was a thriving civilization, maybe had 100,000 people max.
it was a big city.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Okay. So, yeah, absolutely businesses and I've heard people describe sales or the ability to sell, commerce is the exchange of value for value.
Well, that's exactly what it is. In fact, what is money? It is an IOU for value received.
Right.
Right. So because
So,
as we got bigger, we couldn't do the barter because you may not need what I'm giving, but you need what somebody else
and then you
has.
have to do a three-way and then
Right.
it's, it's
But they
just,
go 7-way and a 10-way and a 20-way and but money, here's an IOU, then you give it to somebody else. And that's all it is.
yeah, yeah. It's a symbol of value.
Right. And
Um,
I'm sure you know this too, and for your listeners. So the more value as a business you can bring to the market, the more money you get in exchange.
right. So mindset, the
Mindset.
mindset around it's to provide value to the marketplace and also to provide value to the rest of the team. That's
Right.
what your job is for, right? It's why you get paid a wage.
Well, it's that and correct. And if I don't do my job, how does that affect the rest of the team? So not only does it make it harder for us to provide this value to the marketplace, to our clients, but the rest of my team now suffers. And anthropologically, we're wired to support the tribe.
Right.
Because if you go back to pre civilization, the hunter-gatherer days, if you weren't giving value to the tribe, what did they do to you?
You were out.
And now you've got to survive on your own. And we are not apex predators by ourselves.
Right.
So survival's at stake. So it's really tapping into survival instincts that are in our DNA.
Yeah.
So,
It is amazing. And I'm sure you saw this in the military, the things that you would be willing to do for somebody else that you wouldn't think about doing for yourself.
right. We're willing to let ourselves down. It's why New Year's resolutions fail. I want to lose weight. Why? Because I want to feel better. Well, you know what? I feel really darn good eating this pie, right? I want to lose weight because I want to be around for my grandkids. Whole different attitude now because it's for them. Or I don't want my children to grow up thinking it's okay to be fat because I know how bad that is, how unhealthy that is. Right? When we start motivating and really not motivating, but inspiring ourselves. I look at motivation as external and inspiration as internal. So we can be inspired by helping others. Now we don't want to let others down.
Great. So mindset,
Model. Leaders need to walk the talk, right? Steve, I'm sure in your life you've experienced this, right? You've probably worked for other people at a few times.
Yeah, now and again.
Have you ever heard, or whether it's explicit or implicitly, do as I say, not as I do?
Oh, yes.
How's that go over?
It doesn't work.
Right. As leaders, as if we're running a business or a leader in a business, we need to be the team member we expect our team members to be. And it doesn't mean like if you're the owner of the company, you have to be there at 9 or 8 or whatever time the business starts and be, first in, last out. Certainly, if that's how you're bent, that's who you are, that's great. It means if you want them to respect your time, you have to respect their time. So when you go to somebody and say, hey, you got a minute here, I want to talk to you about this thing, and whatever this thing isn't time critical, and you pull them away from their daily task to do it, what you're really saying is my time's more important than yours. How are they going to respond? They're going to say, no, it's not. And then subtly, they'll show up late. They'll come back late from breaks, right? They'll be on their phones, taking your time away from them, right? Because you're disrespecting their time.
And not only that, but you're saying that what they're working on isn't that important.
That's exactly right.
Right. And if it's not that important, then I can do other stuff.
That's exactly right. So the subliminal message you send when you do that. But on the other hand, if I want my team members to make decisions, I need to empower them to make decisions. One, I need to make decisions for myself. But two, when they come to me and they say, what do I do here? I go, I don't know. What do you do here? What do you recommend? If every time somebody asked me what I should do, I said, I don't know, what should you do? What's going to happen? Eventually, you're going to start making decisions.
Yeah. We had this great framework at, I worked at Intel for more than 20 years. And we had this great framework for doing status reports. We called it OSIR, OSIR. What's the objective? What's the status? What are the issues? And what's the recommendation?
Yeah.
You could never come to a meeting with a problem that you didn't have. Now, you may not be able to say for sure this is but this is, I've thought of this, and this, and I think this is the direction we should go.
Exactly right. I was watching a video by 𝐿𝐲𝐻𝐿 and her husband. They're entrepreneurs, and it was on the 6-step process for creating a process. It was actually
okay.
And at the end, she was talking about in her business how they have this memo culture that does just that. It forces you to answer questions and make decisions about if you have this idea you bring to the table. Because by going through that process, sometimes you don't even bring the idea to the table because you realize, you know what, it's not going to work, right? Or it doesn't make sense, or it doesn't fit into whatever. Right. Or you come and you say, here's my idea, and by the way, I've thought through all this stuff, and now everyone gets to go, okay, yeah. Had you considered this? Or here's how this is going to affect that, right? To your point. And it's a fantastic framework. I believe in frameworks for everything. I love frameworks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. I mean, the other thing I was struck by that, that talking about walking the talk, and role models. The other thing that I really liked about the Intel culture, they required all senior leaders to teach at least 3 classes a year, because you get up in front of somebody and you're teaching them how to do something, and then they see you in the hallway or in a meeting and you're not doing that thing.
Yeah.
You've got a
And
role model.
no, you're not. You're absolutely not. It's funny. When I ran a moving company, I was president of a large moving company here in San Diego, and our QA people were our instructors,
Sure.
right? That's like the perfect marriage because the same people going out and inspecting, are you doing the job right or teaching you how to do it right? And they're setting the standard. And sometimes, right, they had the opportunity to iterate because they had that freedom. They'd go out there and go, well, how come you didn't do this? Well, this condition existed. Oh, that's really good solution there. Now we go back and we discuss it as a group and we adopt that as an iteration of the policy or procedure.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
By the way, what we're talking about now is the third M, the mechanics,
It's the how.
the how. The mechanics allow you to set people up for success, right? We typically in business, we expect people to do a specific job, right? So this is what you're responsible to do. And here's how much of it you're responsible for doing, right? We have what and how much metrics, right? Whether it's
Yep.
sales, production, payroll is supposed to get done on time. Receivables are supposed to be, no more than 10%, whatever that number might be. That's
You got to measure it somehow.
right, right. When you create the processes and procedures, they're in writing. And I know companies like Intel, bigger companies are really good at this. Small businesses, this is their, yeah, they're terrible at this and for most part. Everything written down. And I mean from how you open the key door in the morning to how you shut it at night and everything that happens in between. And then, and this is the other piece, you train to that so formalized training, written syllabus-based training, and I'll get back to why it needs to be written and syllabus-based, with testing. Because that testing now lets the people at the other end, the people who are taking it, I know how to do this.
You're talking about validating that they have learned how to do it.
Correct.
A test, a quiz, or whatever that says at the end, you got trained. Now you can verify that you've actually learned it. Or
that's correct. Whether it's
okay.
a practical test, a written test, depending on the subject, that could
Yeah,
change, right? In the military, we used to have these PQS, personal qualification standards. So if you were trying to, promote or learn a new skill, you watch and I'm making up what it might look like. You watch somebody do it 3 times. You did it under supervision 3 times. Then you did it 3 times on your own without supervision, but somebody came and inspected it afterwards. And it's like, okay, now you can do it. You're signed off. You now know how to do that task. And now you're expected to do it correctly every time. And the beauty is, if you need to counsel somebody for failing later, oh, I didn't know excuse doesn't exist.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious because one of the things that we work with our clients on is in the AI space in particular is leveraging the power of AI to help build those procedures for those small businesses that say, I don't have the time to do it. Well, if you don't take the time, it'll get done wrong, and then you're going to have to go back and redo it, and then it costs you more time. So better off in documenting it, but leverage tools to help you do that.
I love AI. I mean, I literally all morning I'm working with ChatGPT. I'm actually writing, my next blog. I don't let it write it and just publish it, but I work with it because it can produce the product so much faster than I can. And then I read through it and I go, oh, here's some changes, and we have a communication. I think of AI as an idiot savant because it never remembers, it never learns from its mistakes. But it's so fast that it's worth it. But to your point, I mean, I've run small businesses my whole career. Okay. I've owned a few, including this one. Whether I was starting out like my telecom business, I started out just me, and it was literally just me. And as I developed a process and procedure, I wrote it down. Well, wait a second, aren't you going to remember it next time? Well, here's the thing. One, maybe not. If it's a process that you do once a month, you end up reinventing the wheel every time. More importantly, you have no way of iterating it and making it, because the second time you go through it, you go, oh, wait a second. If I did this step first, that'll be faster. Or I forgot to write this little thing down that is so critical. 3 to 4 times through, and this thing is perfect. Now, when I hired my operations manager, who became a minority partner, but also my first employee, and he was taking that stuff away from me, I handed him, here's how I do things. Now he's able to hit the deck plates running and start improving on my work instead of reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
It's teaching people how to fish instead of giving them the fish.
That's great. So how do you move to a culture of accountability? How do you get people to buy in? How do you get leadership to move? What's the process that you go through with your clients?
So it starts with leadership. Okay, well, decisions, in my opinion, decisions need to be at the lowest possible level, very Deming's TQM approach, right? Because that's where speed comes from, and accuracy, by the way. Something like a cultural shift has to start at the top because of the model piece, right? It doesn't do any good for the C-suite, and even in small business for ownership, whatever you want to call it, right? To go, here's how I want you to operate, but I'm not going to operate this way, right? They need to understand the language. They need to understand everything that's going on. So I work with the leadership teams. And then we start typically with the mindset piece. What is your purpose? I have a client, we just graduated them, and they worked with them for a year. They were MSP, around 10 million in revenue, but they were more than just an MSP. They were a technology company. They had infrastructure, so they did structured cabling. They had the MSP to do the phone support, et cetera. They also had their own ISP, right? So they would go into companies, actually do the horizontal cabling, provide the internet service, and then the infrastructure and support them. And they originally saw each of those as 3 different distinct profit centers with different client profiles. And what and had was a bunch of siloing because of this. So the infrastructure people would put in some infrastructure, those people would want support on it, but the MSP would go, well, that's not our client. And they would either get poor support or no support because it was, who's getting billed for this? It should have been warranted, right? It was big stink fight like that. We identified, and it took a lot of work and it was a lot of fighting, meaning them giving me pushback until they had this epiphany that they actually did have one ideal client profile. And the world changed for them. They started speaking a different language internally. They started viewing things differently internally. All of a sudden, they changed their structure so that the help desk can support the infrastructure people or the ISP clients, right, who are just receiving internet service from them, right? And as a result, their last quarter was their record-breaking EBITDA quarter for them, in spite of losing 2 large revenue-generating clients. They still broke EBITDA records. So it started with purpose. Once they understood the purpose, then we go to the mechanics and we start saying, do you have all those things in place? And what did they look like? They needed better, more accurate job descriptions. They needed better processes. They still need to this day, but it's an ongoing thing, better training. That's not something that happens overnight. So there's a lot of different things that get put in place over the course of the year. And while we're putting that in place, I'm working with the leadership team on the mindset. What are you speaking about? How do you talk about these things? How do you communicate? How do I hold somebody accountable? And by the way, for me, accountability is not holding people accountable. That's a tool of accountability. And remind me, I'll come back to that. But how do you hold people accountable? right? In a way that they come out of that meeting feeling uplifted, not trod upon. Because that's usually what happens, right?
Yeah. When you say, I'm going to hold you accountable, that's generally seen as a punitive or a negative disciplinary kind of action.
Right. In the leadership, in the radical accountability leadership doctrine, first of all, accountability, literally the word accountability means the ability to account for. An account comes from the Latin word computere, which means to calculate. And so really it's following a process. So if I said account for yourself, what are you going to do? You're going to tell me the things that you did. That's the process you followed. Does that process follow the process we provided you? Well, if we didn't provide you a process, how can we hold you accountable to doing our process, right? That's where the mechanics come in, bringing this full circle.
Okay.
So a culture of accountability is where people willingly follow the process. Why do they willingly follow the process? Because they know why it exists. They know how it affects others, how it gets the bottom product done, right? They understand all of it, and they're seeing leadership follow the process themselves. So now that accountability conversation starts like this. So mindset, my mindset as a leader holding somebody accountable is, how do I set you up for success? Because you're not succeeding. And by the way, I know you're capable of success, because if you weren't capable of it, I wouldn't waste my time with this conversation. We only hold people accountable we think are capable. If we fail to hold them accountable, we're sending a subliminal message. You're not capable. So it starts with what's in my heart when I sit down with you. It's not to make me feel better by chewing your butt out. It's not to make me feel better by yelling and screaming like a madman. By the way, I've seen that in the military. It doesn't work very
sure.
well.
Yeah.
Actually, not as often as you think, and it still exists. But if I come to you and say, listen, I need to set you up for success, and here's where you're failing. Let's just have a frank conversation. Here's where it's not being successful. These are the metrics, and you're not meeting them. So here's the support I want to give you. We're going to send you back for retraining or whatever support is available. Really clear.
Yeah.
We're going to meet once a week. We're going to go over this. And by the way, Steve, you got a month to start meeting your numbers. And if you don't, and this is the piece that's always missing, here are the clear consequences of that failure to meet. And if I have a reputation because I always honor my word, and you don't meet these conditions, those consequences will be visited upon you. I almost feel biblical when I said that. Right?
Yep.
In fact, I am not imposing those on you. You are volunteering for them, aren't you?
You're choosing.
Correct. You're choosing.
You're choosing those consequences over the other consequences.
Right. Right. And those consequences.
If I've as I have the leader have given you the tools that you need to be successful. Now, if I haven't given you the tools that you need, that's a different conversation.
That's exactly right. And that's where most, especially small businesses fail, because they don't believe they have the time. Any listener out here who's going, but I don't, I'm too busy, right? Because you have 5 hats on. Think of it like an investment. You invest the time today, and tomorrow you'll get that back in spades, because it's not just once, right? It's a gift that keeps on giving over and over. It's the same reason you write down your processes and procedures, because the more efficient you get at it, that's gift of time back to yourself, but it takes the investment up front.
Yeah. How can you say you don't have the time to do it if you don't have the time to do it over?
And one more piece on that, and you're absolutely right. So I talk about model. As a leader, what is our job?
It's to enable the people that are a part of our team to get their job done.
Yeah, and I would say the strategy to do this, this is actually the sole strategy in my mind for leadership, is to create self-actualized individuals, a la Abraham Maslow, okay? And to do that, we need to follow his hierarchy of, physiological needs, safety and security needs, love and belonging needs, and esteem needs. If I don't hold you accountable, I'm saying you're not capable, there goes esteem out the window, because it's not your self-esteem, it's does the team recognize the value I bring to the table? That's what esteem is. So if my job is to do that and I fail to hold somebody accountable, aren't I really failing to do my job? Which means I'm modeling not doing my job. What am I going to get more of out of my team?
Same thing.
Exactly. You got to hold people accountable. It's your job.
So Dave, I understand you have some free resources that are available to listeners here. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I have a 20-page white paper on radical accountability if you want to get a better picture of that. But the other thing I have is I've developed 10 frameworks. These are the essential tactics required for leadership. Leadership is the small day-to-day things we do to affect a much bigger result, right? And so I have what I call my Locked On Radical Accountability Tactics Guide, and it's all 10 of those frameworks. If you go to my website, lockedonleadership.com, scroll to the bottom, there's a sign up for my newsletter, and the thank you page for that will have those 2 resources. Plus, there's a link there if you like to schedule free, no obligation, just a one-to-one with me. Let's talk about what's going on in your world. I promise it's not a sales call. You will leave that with some actionable insight into how you can change whatever is going on that you wanted to talk about.
That's great. And is that the best way for people to reach out to you, is through your website or LinkedIn, or what's the best way?
I mean, best way. Whatever the best way is, the way you do it. So my website is all my contact, dave@lockedonleadership.com. I don't mind putting it out there. I mean, the crawlers have that anyway, based on the amount of junk mail I've already received. My phone number's on the website. There's a scheduling link on the website. LinkedIn is fine. I get notified on LinkedIn. It's Dave Rosenberg Speaks. So, LinkedIn / whatever Dave Rosenberg Speaks is the profile on LinkedIn. I'll answer to all of those. If I see your smoke signals, well, I don't know how to do smoke signals, so I won't be able to respond, but I'll find your fire.
Thanks. And that concludes our show. Thanks so much to my guest, Dave Rosenberg, a former F-14 Naval Flight Officer, founder of Locked On Leadership, and the architect of Radical Accountability Leadership Doctrine. I hope you learned something about how to build a culture of accountability. I know I did. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to the Profit Minds podcast. This is your host, Dr. Stephen Kirch. Please visit www.profitminds.net for other episodes or to contact me. Thank you for your positive feedback, comments, questions, and for sharing this show with others. Thanks for listening. Have a grateful day.